Okay, so let's get started with our stop animation project. Let's create our standard canvas at 1920 by 1080 pixels horizontal. There we go, we have it. Let's pull our canvas tab down so that we have a free-floating window. And let's begin this project by saving right away. Let's save our file as a PSD file, and let's also create the folder where we will save all the elements for this project. There will be many elements that we will create from this PSD file. We will be creating a series of TIFF files, so it's worth our while to begin organizing from the very beginning. So we're going to call this Steeler Stop Action Animation. That will be our folder. And our project will be called Steeler's Stop Action Pics for Animation. Okay, let's go up to our initial layer, which is called background, and call it white. Then you know the routine, where we go up to the hamburger and we create the required layers necessary in all of our PSD projects, especially to create TIFF files for animation. There we go, we have our white layer, our black layer, and our blank layer. Now, we want to start looking at the images that we shot for our stop animation. We're going to go to our file where we have them saved. And I shot about 500 images, and I've categorized them into three groups, A, B, and C. Group A has about 52 images. Group B has 88 separate images. Group C has 44 images. These were three series that sort of had a flow of movement. Let's work with Group A. Let's take a look at all of them. Let's highlight them by selecting all. And we'll do a right click and we'll go to Quick Look. When we go to Quick Look, it opens all of the images sequentially. And by hitting our arrow that points to the right, we can scroll through these images and get a feel for what an animation might look like with this series. Once again, we can select all of the images in the folder, right-click on one of them, come down to Quick Look, and we can scroll through them to get a feel for whether these images will work as a stop frame animation. I particularly like shots 13 to 24. I'm thinking that that might be my 1 second of motion that we will work with in this project. I need 12 images, so I'm going to open 13 through 24. And that's what's happening right now. They're opening up in Photoshop. And I'm going to now go to my canvas and separate it from the images I just opened. I'm going to copy and paste from number 13 through 24 individually into my PSD canvas where we will create our TIFF files for animation. So I will click on the first one, which is number 13. And you can always go over to the little arrows on the right to get to the first one, and I want to make sure I'm doing this sequentially. So I'm clicking on number 13. I'm going to select all, and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to create a new layer in my PSD file. I'm going to name it Group A Steelers number 1. And then I'm going to paste my selection onto this layer. So there I have the first image of my sequence pasted into my PSD file. I'm going to the next one, number 14. I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to copy the entire image. I'm going to go to my PSD canvas. I'm going to add a new layer by pasting. It automatically comes up as layer 1. I rename it Group A Steelers number 2. After I copy and paste, I'm going to delete these images so that I don't get any duplicates. I'm going to the next one, which is number 15. I will select all. I will copy. I will go back to my PSD canvas. I will paste. It will automatically create a new layer. And I will name this one Group A, Steelers number 3. Now I'm going to speed up the process as you've seen what I'm doing here. So I'm going to do this same thing for all 12 images that I've selected out of my Group A that look like they'll be a decent animation of movement. As we discussed in class, I liked this selection of 12 images because not only does it show the Steelers tossing a medicine ball, but it also shows a camera move, moving from one side of the Steelers to the other side. So I have two moves in there. A camera move as well as the activities of the Steelers throwing and catching the medicine ball. I will just finish copying and pasting the last two images of the sequence. And you can see that in my PSD file, I have all 12 images as separate layers, but they're very large. These images are much larger in their raw format than the canvas we use for animating. So, the next thing I need to do is save, of course. I'm going to get you guys to save every 2 seconds. It's going to be a habit. Okay, now, we can see that these images are by far much larger than the canvas that we will be using for animation. So I need to reduce the size of these, so I will highlight them all. I will begin to scale them. I will do them all together by clicking on the first one and the last one while holding the Shift key down. Then I will do the function that you are all learning very well in class of transforming my images by scaling them to fit within the required canvas that we need in order to create TIFF files for animation. Now that I have them sized, I want to center them because I'm going to make separate TIFF files of all of these pictures with an edge. I'm not going to make full screen TIFFs. So as you know, I like to use my rulers with a percentage breakdown where I can find my center point very easily. Now, let's start looking through these images and sort of seeing how they will look as we animate them. We can look at this simply by clicking the eyes on and off as we go up our PSD file layers. As I turn on the eye, you can see how these images will flow together, perhaps as a decent animation. We'll find out as this project progresses. I'm going to make these images look like they are printed photographs with borders. So I want to create an off-white border by using a layer effect, which is the stroke, which we are all familiar with from our in-class practicum. I'm going to do a stroke inside, slightly off-white, which will make each of these pictures look like a photographic print. I'm going to copy the layer effect and paste it to all the rest of the images in this series by right-clicking, and you can see as I come down with my cursor, I can copy the effect. I will then paste the layer effect on the remaining layers of this PSD file by clicking on the second one and the last one while I hold the Shift key down, highlighting them all, right-clicking, and again you can see that I'm able to paste the layer effect. Now we see that the layer effect is pasted on every single layer. So they all now have this border that makes them look like they are photographic prints. Let's turn on the eyeballs of each of the layers and see how it animates by clicking up the layers of the PSD file. It's about time now to save the entire project. Now we're going to create TIFF files just like we did in class with our dots. I'm selecting the blank layer and the first image layer. I'm merging them. As I load the selection, you can see the dotted line that indicates that the merged image is loaded. I go to my Channels tab, I click the alpha icon, turn on the Rubylith, I hit Save As, because I'm going to save all of these images for animation. I'm going to create a brand new folder named Steeler Stop Action Pics, where I will save these TIFF files, so I have things very organized on my computer for animating these images in Premiere. I'm going to sequentially name these images so that it's very clear of their sequence when I import them into Premiere to begin an animation. I'm also going to always move my blank layer up after I complete creating one TIFF file. So I will move it up to the second image, and I will go through the same process every time, merging the blank layer and the image layer, loading the image, and creating an alpha channel, and saving them in the special folder as a TIFF file. I'm hoping that you get more familiar with this process. You did very well when we started to create the TIFF files of our dots. This is the exact same protocol and the exact same procedure, but we're creating a separate TIFF file for each image that we will animate in Premiere. We're going to speed up the process as you're beginning to see how I do this with every layer. And I think you can see that this is a labor-intensive process. That's why we're only selecting 12 images this time, and if we create our animation based on the principles of 24 frames per second and use one image for 2 seconds, we will create a smooth animation with our 12 images to create 24 frames of motion. When we go to Premiere, we may actually make our frames last longer than 2 seconds, 2 frames, and we'll see how this flows when we start working in Premiere. But for the time being, I want you to see how labor-intensive it is to create each of these frames. It may seem like it's too much work, but I also want you to understand how amazing the process of animation is, how complex the process of animation is, and what softwares now replace in terms of the hard work necessary to create animation that we are beginning to discover from the past to how I'm asking you to create step animation and stop animation now. The reason I have decided to create these images as individual photographs is that I want this animation to have the look of photographs being placed on a desk and animating themselves. So let's go look for a desktop. What came to mind immediately was just a nice wood grain desktop where these photographs will be animated. There we go, I found one that I like, but as you can see, it is a copywritten product. So I'm going to a floor company, and I'm just going to copy one of their samples of a floor, which is not copywritten, and I will paste this image. I will create a new layer, and I will call it Desktop Wood. And I will paste this image and size it to be full raster, to be full frame, because I want this to be the desk behind the photographs that I will animate. Now I'm going to bring it down to the bottom of my PSD file so I can see what it looks like. I'm going to take my 12th image and duplicate it, and I'm going to create a sample to get an idea of how I want to make this look when I begin to animate it in Premiere. We created our TIFF files perfectly straight within our PSD file. But when I animate them, I will want them to be at an angle with a slight cast shadow as they are dropped onto the desktop and as they become alive through animation. So this is simply a mock-up or a sample that I'm creating in Photoshop to give me an idea of how I will create these TIFF files to look in Premiere. I will change their position. I will add a drop shadow to give depth to the images as they lay on the desktop. And in Photoshop, I can see now if this is going to have a look that I'm pleased with, or if I need to come up with a different way to create my TIFF files for this simple animation of 12 images of the Steelers tossing a medicine ball while I also create a camera move with my position on the football field. To summarize, we have selected 12 images and we are going to try animating these 12 images in Premiere. We have created our individual TIFF files by creating alpha channels of each image, and we will import these images into Premiere and simply animate them on top of a desktop. It isn't realistic, but it is stop animation, and I hope you will begin to understand the principles of animation with our first stop animation project.